think you could stop me from splitting my pain with your friend? You can't stop it. You can't stop nothing.
You're right, I can't stop it, but Rigby can.
Xbox.
That clock keeps ticking like a metronome.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to another tier list where I spoon-feed you the opinions of a Xenos arthropod supremacist. Today we're going to be ranking the various DLCs of RimWorld in regards to power level. This idea came from a comment suggesting the ranking of DLCs, which are worth to buy, but ultimately I think the community has already reached a most consensus on the most necessary DLCs to buy. However, if you do want my opinion on the worth of DLCs, my ranking for them would look like this, though with the disclaimer that I think every DLC in RimWorld is worth it if you enjoy the game. Therefore, I decided that this would be a more interesting video, deciding instead on what DLCs make your colony the most powerful and dangerous in RimWorld. How dangerous does your colony become military-wise? How much stronger you are at the end of each DLC? Which is more powerful? Slavery, zombies, chromosome piracy, friends in high places, or spaceships? But with that all being said, one more disclaimer before we begin. Understand that this is my opinion, and that although my opinion is objectively correct, as is the opinion of any arthropod supremacist, that your tier list may differ slightly or greatly from my own. And we will start off with the 5th and newest DLC released, Odyssey. Odyssey has been described by many to be the best content-wise DLC since Biotech, with the addition of 5 new biomes, not including space locations, and 3 of which being rather unique and providing a almost completely brand new playstyle. It released over 40 new animals, 2 of which being the most powerful animals in the game, and new animal content in general as well. However, the real addition to power level is going to come from the addition of grav ships, allowing you to effectively control the map in regards to a fight no matter where you are. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has seen videos of people making grav ships that are just glorified death barges where they crash it right in the middle of tribal bases and destroy everything. Furthermore, Odyssey also released new laser weaponry with the Beam Grazer and Beam Repeater, capable of ripping apart most non-mechanoid threats, with a little cherry on the top being the Hunter Traps, which are basically grenades that don't miss because they chase the nearest enemy target. It will be time-consuming to create a good, competent death barge, and it's also fairly difficult to get one of the apex animals. However, overall, I would say that Odyssey achieves a fairly good power level, with plenty of all-around strengths for combat, and their real shining being able to control the map almost no matter what. Thus, I'm going to be giving it around mid-tier. Up next we have Ideology, the second DLC in the series, which introduced religion, new buildings, tribal roles including combat roles, farm tools, and Gromlin trees. Overall, this DLC can be about cohesion and unity, being okay with things people normally aren't okay with, and enslaving people into farm tools, and of course making money. However, aside from money, there really isn't much here in regards to combat power. Slavery is fine for pawns, but it more or less just becomes a faster way to recruit someone who you can't be bothered with actually recruiting, and you will settle with them potentially rebelling because they're cannon fodder anyways.
First time ever in 2B2T history, slave labor.
A majority of the buildings don't really serve much purpose outside of religion, though I do think the combat roles, if you soup up a shooting specialist enough, they can become a valuable asset in fights, though you also have to remember that doing this sacrifices most of your pawn's other work capacities, and it's not an impossible to attain a close enough level of effectiveness as this either, as you can mostly replicate their abilities with other pawns. And Gromlin trees are definitely viable and competent combatants, though you can also still achieve greater results with biotech mechanoids. The Clawer and Barkskin Dryads likely aren't winning you any wars on their own, unless you have nothing but Gromlin tree planters, and some mod that buffs them and allows you to take them with you. Thus, I have to say, I believe that Ideology, even though I love my farm tools and tree militarism, is the weakest power-wise of the 5 DLCs. On to Anomaly, the 4th DLC added, and considered by many to be the least necessary of all RimWorld DLCs, as its main content is introducing a new antagonist outside of all the other RimWorld DLCs in base game, just to culminate in a single questline. This comes in the form of invoking the Void, which causes monsters and other events to emerge onto your world, and attack your pawns and other things, which you can then capture and study, and ultimately, in many cases then replicate with the in-game goal of either shutting down the Void, or utilizing its power for yourself. Though, with all the abilities and tools being taken into account, I have to say that, despite it being the least necessary DLC, that I also consider Anomaly to be the most powerful. The first and arguably biggest reason will be because of the ghouls. Ghouls are monsters who are the most powerful pawn melee brutes in the game that can be controlled directly by you, and are capable of becoming exponentially powerful. They have a void shard lodged in between their butt cheeks, causing them to regenerate any and all damage within a single day. Furthermore, they can be upgraded with various ghoul-specific upgrades, such as plating, and non-ghoul-specific upgrades as well, with things like power claws, with their only maintenance being eating raw meat, and their only stat being melee damage. Thus, with all of this, combat-wise, the ghoul has no equal, and with virtually no maintenance and no shot of mental breaking ever, ghouls are an invaluable combat asset for any playthrough. Weapons-wise, Anomaly's guns, although not terrible, aren't anything to write home about either. Though they do have their own versions of the Shock and Insanity lances with an additional lance that can turn a target into a flesh monster instantly. They have packs, which can deploy mini turrets anywhere, a few combat drugs, the ability to make a pawn forget their previous life, allowing you to recruit useful, unwaveringly loyal pawns, but the other useful power item is going to be that of the Dead Life Dust, which is dust that when deployed causes any dead body in the area to reanimate as a shambler allied to you for a short time. And you can also be put into mortar shells or IEDs, meaning as long as you don't clean up your dead bodies, you can have an army of the damned pretty much wherever you need. A horde of raiders approaching? Army of the damned. They've reached your first line of defenses? Army of the damned. Invading ancient Greece? Army of the damned. Opening the cupboards to cook some breakfast? Army of the damned.
Puff that very night. And the next morning. And 2 hours later.
You get the point. Dead Life Dust is additionally very powerful. And this isn't even all of the Anomaly's weapons either, as there are several other rituals that I didn't even mention. Thus, with both ghouls, Dead Life Dust, and plenty of other abilities and gadgets, I can easily see the justification for ranking Anomaly as number 1 in regards to power level. And moving on to Royalty DLC, the first added DLC to RIMWORLD, Royalty introduces the most complex and sophisticated factions, psycasts, some of the strongest armors, and some of the best melee weapons in the game. The definition of Royalty DLC in regards to power level can be boiled down to having friends in high places.
Lord Foog the Toast.
Allying with the Empire is the quickest and most surefire way of getting your hands on psycasts, though even though Berserk and Neural Quakes are powerful abilities, the real power of Royalty comes from your allegiance to the Empire. Aside from the aforementioned Cataphract armor and the Mono Sword, the Empire has an honor and title system that, in addition to raising relations, also allows various favors to be called in for free. These favors include airstrikes and multiple trooper squads, allowing you to easily take the heat off of any fight or outright wipe out or overwhelm your opponents. Does this beat out Odyssey? I think it might, as having mobile murder boxes where virtually nothing is safe is really hard to beat, but also having a high-ranking Imperial and access to amazing weapons and armor, and of course Imperial luxury, is a good contender. And lastly, we have Biotech, the third DLC added and universally decided as the best and most necessary DLC of all, adding in xenotype races, babies, pollution, mechanitors, which allow you to create and control your own mechanoids, and gene modding. Now, aside from the mechanoids, there aren't really any direct weapons in Biotech, rather allowing you to make your own customizable master race of combat-capable pawns, raising your overall power potentially exponentially, or turn people into glorified slugs for shits and giggles.
I have no mouth. And I must...
Keep in mind, it still isn't enough to beat a fully upped ghoul, as even with the best possible genetics in base game Biotech, my pawn still lost on an equal fight with a fully upped ghoul, and was only able to win when kiting with the super fast runner gene. However, since you can literally make an ultra pawn who can be tailored to pretty much whatever you want, including things like go juice dependency, it can get pretty goddamn close. Now, as for the Mechanitor, this pushes it beyond Odyssey and Royalty, as with a Mechanitor, you have access to robots that can destroy entire worlds. Keep in mind you have to destroy the robots that can destroy entire worlds first before you can make them. However, the ability to produce mechanoids that are capable of doing almost anything short of psycasts, and having their own standing military of walking tanks, summoners, vaporizer lasers, and hermit crabs inside mech suits, the Mechanitor pushes Biotech into the top tier category, right alongside Anomaly. You could say one is above the other, but I think since ghouls outmatch gene-modded pawns, though if you do micro and kite the ghoul you can beat them, and a gene-modded pawn turned into a ghoul is even more monstrous, I'll leave Anomaly above Biotech. But that'll about do it for this tier list. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more like it, please leave me a comment down below telling me what you enjoyed as well as what you would like to see next, both RimWorld and otherwise. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing as I upload new long-form content every week, as well as new shorts every single day encapsulating variety content, including challenges, guides, memes, audience participation, playthroughs, and even theories. Also, consider joining the Discord with a link in the description, as well as the pinned comment to become part of the show. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.